Welcome to Make America Healthy Again. Join Dr. Charles Antinori and friends as they share solutions, tips, and insights that only doctors know for creating better health. Here's Dr. Antinori.
All right, this is the Make America Healthy Again podcast, and I'm Dr. Antinori. Today my guest is Dr. John Carey, who's my brother-in-law and a family practitioner that I've known for probably about 50 years, I guess now. Yeah, John, you want to just give a little bit of your background?
Yeah, I'm John Carey. Right now I'm 75 years of age. I've been in practice over 40 years. I did my training at Downstate Medical School in Brooklyn, trained at Kings County Hospital. After that was done, I went into family practice.
You were in Rochester,
I went to Rochester,
right?
New York, yeah.
Yeah, family practice,
which was
right?
the premier family practice program, I don't know, in the country, but certainly on the East Coast at the time. It had a reputation for jumping on the family practice bandwagon early. It was prior to family practice residencies. There was just what we had was called a GP. That was a guy who went to 4 years of medical school, 1 year of an internship, and went into practice.
Right.
And that was the way things were until they established family practice residencies to sort of upgrade the family practitioner. They were going to breathe new life into it, sort of counteract some of the trends towards specialization. And I was a part of that. I was in the very early stages of that. That started in the mid 70s or so, when they really established family practice residencies. It started mostly in rural areas or places like Rochester, New York, but it later spread to the residency program, spread to all big hospitals. The federal government got behind it, and it was being promoted for a period of time.
Still is. I don't think you see nobody goes out and just hangs up a shingle anymore, right?
No.
But it's funny, John, as you say that, I think back, as you mentioned, we're contemporaries. I'm 77, but my training was a little bit longer, but I count from when I graduated medical school, 73. I'm like now 53 years since medical school. So you're probably about the same. Yeah.
I started in practice in 1980. Yeah.
Guys it was temptation during a surgical residency, which especially back then was brutal. I mean, it's brutal now, but it was really brutal back then. 100 hours a week, treated like, crap, and like a slave, basically. And guys could stop after 1 year. You got your internship. You get a license after the 1 year of an internship. You had a medical license. And you could go out and you could work in an emergency room or something like that and make a decent living, back then without taking any residencies. And even we finished right around when Roe v. Wade passed. Surgeons could go out after, a year or two of training and basically do like abortions in an abortion clinic and really make a fair amount of money that way without really finishing any kind of residency,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. After 1 year training of a 3-year residency, you were licensed.
You're licensed.
And then I just grafted onto the moonlighting system that was already in place at the hospital I was training at in Rochester, and went to a rural hospital just south of Rochester, New York, to a place called Dansville, Nicholas Noyes Hospital, where I was the only doctor in the entire hospital for the entire weekend. That was moonlighting. You slept upstairs in one of the patient beds, and you kept an eye on the emergency room.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And they
talk
paid
about
you.
Training.
And they paid you, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you got paid. Yeah.
That was extra, right? Yeah.
Extra money.
I moonlighted in the blood bank. I used to draw blood in the blood bank and stuff like at our hospital to make a few extra bucks during residency. Because you were getting paid almost. I started out at $12.03, in New York City. That was one of the highest. That was one of the highest paid, internships in the country. It's because it was in New York City, but it was really. It doesn't sound like very much money now, and it really wasn't very much money even then.
Well, you learn a lot of things. You're just the only doctor in the hospital. You got a very competent group of nurses. It's an emergency room. The nearest big hospital is maybe 50 miles away, maybe more. The one case, there's a couple of cases I really remember from that. This grandfather brought in his granddaughter who was staying with them. The kid was just basically flopping over, dehydrated, been vomiting. The kid looked, I don't know how else to put this, kid looked dead. Was totally white. So, your first instinct, I'm just an intern, 1 year into this. you kind of mentally look over your shoulder. Who's going to help me with this? No, you're the only guy there with the nurses. So you know what? That makes it easy, easier in some ways. I was always pretty good with my hands and getting IVs in. I put a butterfly into a scalp vein, started to run some fluid in, got some cultures, did some, and the kid perked up, as children do. About a week later, and sent the kid up to Rochester. He was just plain dehydrated, but I'd never seen a kid that dehydrated. It was just
it's amazing. Yeah, how fast. What, you have food poisoning, you think, or something like that, maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But it taught me a couple of things. It was being cared for by the grandparents. When a kid is being cared for by people other than their own parents, there's a delay in realizing that this kid really needs to be taken somewhere. Because they don't want to. They're reluctant till the parents come back and give them the okay. Really, that's just psychological what was going on. So it taught me a lesson about that. And about a week later, I got a phone call in my house. This is the days when no cell phones. The phone rings in the kitchen in my house in Rochester, and it's the chairman of the pediatric department at Strong Hospital, the big hospital in town, congratulating me. I guess she heard by word of mouth or something what had gone on. And she just congratulated me for doing the right thing. But that's when I realized what training is. All during that thing, I felt like someone was standing, a little person was standing on my shoulder, whispering in my ear what the next thing to do was. And that's amazing. Yeah. That's absolutely spooky. And I've had that experience before. When you're up against it and you're the only guy there, you do the best you can.
Right. You do the best you can.
That expression, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I always think of that. You're the only guy there. You got the most training. You got to do the best you can, period.
Yeah. Boy, but we were talking before we went on, how things have changed since then. It's just amazing. I guess the technology is really what has changed so much. No CAT scans back then,
Well, in that little hospital, got a guy in with renal colic. So back in the day, we would do a
KUB.
Yeah, KUB, but the one with the dye is escaping me.
Oh, IV pyelogram.
Yeah,
IV pyelogram.
I'd heard of it. I'd never seen one done. The X-ray tech comes up to me, hands me a bottle.
I've seen one done in a long time, but
he hands me a bottle of fluid. Turns out it's pretty simple. You hang this thing up, you put the IV in, you run it in, and he snaps the film.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, God. But you see, now that they don't want to do it that way because the CAT scans are so good that the IV dye will obscure a stone. So one of the times where you don't want IV, for the renal protocol is to do a fine CAT scan without any contrast.
Correct. Stone protocol, we call it.
Stone protocol, right? Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
you've had kidney stones too, right?
No, I never had a kidney stone.
No, I've had about 3 or 4 bad episodes. Yeah,
I had prostate cancer. I don't know if you remember that 20 years ago.
I didn't remember that too much. Yeah. It's good. Yeah.
Turns out that's one of the most genetic cancers there is.
Yeah.
I'm from a big family. I'm one of 10 kids.
Yeah.
I had 5 brothers. 3 of my brothers came down with it after I told them.
Well, it really, Well,
it is one of. I don't know how they measure this, but supposedly it's one of the most genetic cancers there is.
Really.
And I was in my mid-50s when I got it. And I figured I was too young.
Yeah, right. Well, so many people have it, though, too. So, they always say so many men die with prostate cancer rather than die of. Because so many times nowadays, they do that Gleason score. And if you're under a 6 or something like that, they observe it anyway, depending on.
Yeah.
And again, they've gotten way more sophisticated about it, too. They look at this, the aggressiveness of the tumor and all that sort of thing.
They're not as clever as they think they are. Yeah. I'm very aggressive about checking PSAs on everybody who walks through the door from 40 on up, and doing it on a yearly basis. That's my goal.
Right.
Because it's not the simple thing that we've been told along. You die with it rather than of it, and all that.
No,
sort
some
of thing.
people, right.
I went into practice. I was 30 years of age. One of the very first patients I had was a guy 40 who was dying of prostate cancer. He had it in his bones. He was in tremendous pain, and there wasn't a damn thing we could do about it.
Wow.
40 years of age.
Unbelievable. Back then, what I don't understand is how did Joe Biden end up with, prostate cancer in his bones. Who the hell?
I
That's
don't
really
know.
dropping the ball.
They say it's in his bones. What's
I've
his
heard
PSA running?
Yeah, that's about, God,
I
that
don't get that.
yeah, and I've seen that several times that he had metastases. Yeah, it can still be treated. It's not the end,
Prostate
nowadays.
cancer is tricky.
Yeah,
A guy I ride bikes with says, "John, you got to see my father-in-law." Why? What's the matter? Well, he's just failing, and he sees a urologist, and nobody can figure out what's the matter with him, and he's just not himself. He's a retired fireman from New York City, and he should be he wasn't that old. He was 67, 68. He came in, I took a look at him, and sure enough, he looks like a guy who's got something really serious going on. So I did a PSA on him. It was 50.
wow. Oh, yeah, yeah,
He ended up dying within a few months of metastatic prostate cancer.
yeah.
And he was in the hands of a urologist.
Yeah.
So you can't take anything for granted. I've seen that happen over and over, where 1 minute the guy's PSA is 10, the next minute it's 50.
Yeah, I get the PSA every year, and we don't worry about small perturbations. But if it starts, I'm usually like in the 1 to 2 to 3 kind of range, and it goes up and down a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. As long as it
Yeah.
stays in a range, it can
Yeah.
bounce around a little bit.
Yeah.
Mine got up around 5 or 6, 7. I was having all kinds of BPH problems. It was really, really, really annoying.
Yeah.
And, I just said, something's got to be done. That's what drove me into it. Speaking of family, the thing that really drove me into it was Doug DePice, a urologist from Union City, came to his school and gave them a lecture about prostates and prostate cancer to the male teachers. It's kind of a community outreach kind of thing. Yeah. So Doug was telling me about this. And he said, and this is a test where the doctor can do a rectal exam on you, massage your prostate, and you pee into a cup, and they send it off to a lab down in, there's a famous lab that does all the prostate tests, any Becton or somebody. Yeah. Starts with a B. Anyway, so mine was positive. That's when I got me off the fence anyway. I didn't even hear
that's
about
interesting,
that.
Doug, because I think he had prostate cancer too. If I'm not
he
mistaken.
he had some major prostate issues.
Yeah. Well, but again, like we're talking about, there's just some of these things just didn't exist. Like I say, now you get a prostate, you get an MRI, you get an MRI guided biopsy. There were no MRIs. I mean, we were talking about the emergency room, sending somebody to the emergency room. When I was in the emergency room as a resident, that we did the head trauma. But I think they gave it to us rather than a neurology residence, because the neurology residents would have spent all day with each patient, you know what I mean? Like 3 hours doing a neurological exam, and they like kids and everybody would just come in. The mother would say, "We think he bumped his head," or something like that. And, we'd do a pretty thorough exam, check all the cranial nerves and the general nerves, look at the eye grounds, the whole 9 yards. And then we try to give him a head sheet. And tell him tell what the mother to do. Don't feed him, wake him up during the night. If he starts vomiting or anything like that, bring him back in. If the pupils change or anything, bring him back in. All that sort of thing. You couldn't get him out of there. All we had was skull films, and the skull films back then used to cost like $65 a piece. And I was making like literally about $50 for like the 24-hour shift in the emergency room. Yeah, and I'd have to order like 5 or 10 of these useless skull films, every shift to just get people.
Remember this?
Yeah.
Remember all this? That's all we had, for God's sake.
Right.
Now it's an automatic CAT scan.
Right. The CAT scans of the head came in first. I seem to remember them coming in like toward the end of my general surgery residency. We started having, and it was just brain initially, if I remember, the first ones. And then
that was it.
Yeah.
That was the big play.
Yeah.
Yep. We didn't even think about doing them on other things. And you had to get permission from your local neurologist to order a CAT scan.
Is that right?
Remember that?
Yeah. Well,
if you're in the emergency room, that's a different story. But
the state in New Jersey tried to really control it. I mean, again, one of the things we should talk about is, explosion in healthcare costs. But one of the ways, this example of when the state tried to control healthcare costs, New Jersey, you had to get a certificate of need. And they were
the same thing.
Their rule was like, we're not going to have every goddamn hospital in the state have a CAT scanner. No, that was like, this is crazy. We don't really need this kind of thing. And it turns out on that particular issue, they turned out to be pretty wrong.
Very wrong.
They picked the wrong
It's like
hill.
a CBC, for God's sake.
You're right. They picked the wrong hill to die on that one. So we actually, in one of the small, it's Virtua now. It's become a huge healthcare system. It was at that time was Garden State. It was an individual hospital started by the doctors, the private practice doctors that didn't want to practice at Cooper when it became a medical school. When Cooper got affiliated with the medical school, it was like a town versus gown thing. So a lot of the private doctors went out to Marlton, which was a ghost town at that time. Nobody lived there. And Marlton now is one of the busiest little towns in South Jersey. And this hospital is like booming. And the doctors started that hospital. They eventually sold it to Humana, and then it became part of a system that is now the Virtua system. And but when they were not allowed to get a CAT scan, so the radiologists got together and we did a what do you call it, a limited partnership. Each of us put in like $5,000, something, which we got back with. We didn't make a lot of money on the deal, but we bought our own CAT scanner back then. You know, they got like 40 guys that put in like $5,000 each and took a line of credit for another $15,000 to $20,000.
We did the same thing. We put it on a truck and took it around the various hospitals.
You put it on a truck. Some people did that. I think we put it in. I think ours went into the hospital because Cooper and Lourdes, I think, already had them. You know, at that point, they were the other two major hospitals in the area. You know, but that was the state decided, and you know, this is what we're trying to. One of the things we said we're going to talk about was, you know, the burgeoning cost of healthcare. The problem is these tests are great, but they just cost money. I mean, you know, and there's no way to stop it.
There's no stopping it. It's a tsunami. There's absolutely no stopping it. There is nobody in his right mind is against developing new methods of healthcare. That's one thing that people absolutely believe in. They don't know how the hell they're going to pay for it. Yeah. But everybody believes in it. Yeah. And deep in their heart, they believe that the government should pay for it. It should be a part of what comes out of your taxes, and it should be covered. And they're willing to put up with some restrictions to access to it. But basically, they believe that if grandma gets sick or you get sick or you've got a headache, you deserve all the high-tech stuff that's there to treat it and to diagnose it.
The first paragraph of the book, Make America Healthy Again, is like I said, America, we really should pass an amendment to make make healthcare a part of the Bill of Rights. And I said the founding fathers probably would have made it a part of the Bill of Rights because every American believes you have a right to healthcare. You know, and I've luckily everybody's gotten healthcare. I've never seen anybody denied in the poor. You know, you and I have both worked in some really poor places, and you know, over training and practice. And I've never seen anybody denied healthcare that they really needed.
That's true. Because nobody's kicked out of a hospital. No, nobody's booted to the curb.
Yeah, but you can also see how expensive it has gotten. And it's but you know, like I've read in the history of medicine that the average patient, it wasn't until about 1925 that the average patient had a better than average chance of benefiting from an encounter with a physician. Because if you think about it, the germ theory of disease didn't go Pasteur and Semmelweis and those guys. That was like the late 1800s, and it wasn't like it took over immediately. There are a lot of guys practicing in the early 1900s that really didn't believe in germs, you know, like bacteria, viruses, you know, I mean, and they had nothing. I mean, there were, you know, blood typing. Digitalis,
anesthesia, the ability to take out a kid's appendix.
Right. Yeah, that was what
kids used to die of appendicitis.
That was like that was the ether dome in the Mass General Hospital. A dentist did it, I think, around 1870 or something, but it really didn't catch on, and it was really dangerous. I mean, even when I went to practice, your chance of dying from anesthesia was higher than your chance of dying from most operations. You know,
I remember that.
The chance of dying from anesthesia early in my surgical years, the first 10 or 15 years of training, was like 1 in 4,000, something like that. Now it's something like 1 in 100,000. You know, the chance of dying from the anesthesia because pulse ox, CO2 monitoring, EKGs on everybody. You know, I remember even when I did my anesthesia preceptorship. Not everybody even got an EKG. a monitor, to get put to sleep. If it was like a healthy person, we don't have enough EKGs. And the EKG was like this tube. It was like this just submarine tube that was like a round tube and had a tiny little screen. You could just see like about 3 or 4 beats, going across it.
You drive me crazy, Charlie, because it's bringing back memories that I haven't thought about since, I did a lot of time in ORs. I worked on the trauma service when I was a medical student. I really wanted to go into general surgery, but I changed my mind. But so I was on the trauma service at Kings County with the residents, and then it was the Wild West,
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, well, with Kings County especially, my God. But that was what was one of the things that was really interesting about talking to your son, Paul. He was talking about the trauma training he got at Kings County and how it really helped him, years later as an orthopedic surgeon over in Iraq and Afghanistan. Just have been exposed to so much trauma early in his career, early in his training.
I was assisting in an operation for a guy who had been run over by a bus and he had a fractured liver. I thought that was just an expression. When I saw that stellate fracture of this guy's liver, and it's oozing blood and they can't get it to stop. So one of the guys says, we're at Kings County. It's on the other side from the Country Club Hospital, which is downstate across the street. Yeah. So he says, John, you got to go over to downstate and get the liver clamp. So I go over it's 2:00 in the morning. So I go over to downstate. There's nobody around. The security guard lets me in. I go up to he told me where to find it. Went up to the supply room in the OR, picked up this thing, which was labeled, picked it up, carried it across the street, and took it to the operating room. The guy made it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. You know what's interesting?
A liver clamp.
They now they grade the trauma guys. I haven't done liver surgery in the longest time, but they grade liver lacerations now, and they don't operate on a lot of them. You have to. This sounds like one you have to operate on. If it's just like, I think they they all have like 1 through 4. And it's just the 3s and the 4s that they operate on now.
I believe that. Same thing with spleens, right? They used to be guaranteed you had to
take your spleen out.
Spleen.
Yeah, now they'll watch it or try to repair it. I've not been real successful. I mean, again, it didn't come up that often for me. Most of the spleens I took out were really shot, and the people were hypotensive and everything like that. So, we just took it out. But now they want to save it as much as possible. It really, like I say, there's so many things have changed. We were talking about the electronic health records too. That's something that has really changed.
It's good because I dictate my charts on voice recognition, most of it, but a lot of it is pre-filled. All the stuff we used to have to copy down by hand, the family history, social history, that kind of thing. It's all pre-populated because it's been asked and answered, if you will. It's there in the record.
And answered, yes.
Yeah.
Legal.
I know, that's legal stuff. Asked and answered. Yeah. I've been to a bunch of depositions, so I know all the legal jargon.
Me too. So us old doctors can talk about.
If you ever tried, if a patient walked in and said, I had a CBC done here 5 years ago, and you had an old paper chart, trying to find that slip of paper.
Right.
That was maybe shingled into the chart somewhere. Yeah. Trying to find that piece of information is impossible. Now it's there. You can find
it. If they keep the same system, if they let I've been through 2 or 3. The hospital I'm at now, when it had Saurian, which was a good system when I started. I really liked it when I got there. That was 2011, the end of 2011. It was 2012, and then about in 2018 they went to Cerner, and they didn't really move the stuff over. You had to basically go back into Saurian if you wanted to look at. And it wasn't, and there was no flag telling you that this person had been, it's the worst thing. It happened a few times. You see somebody in the office, like maybe I hadn't seen him for 6 months or something. Maybe you only seen him once or twice under the Saurian system, and then they come in like 6 months later in the new Cerner computer system. There's nothing that tells you saw this guy before, and he remembers you, and you don't remember. And then you have to go back in and open up a whole nother system and go in and see what,
Absolutely true.
What you said, But you're right. When it's working right, there's no question it's better. When you got it working right. But it's also no question it's way more expensive. I mean, God, IT has become the biggest department in a lot of hospitals now.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, it's expensive. Yeah. You know,
Keep
I
them
was in
running.
solo practice when EMR first came out, so I tried to switch over, but it's enormously expensive as a solo practitioner. I
Right.
wanted something where I could just kind of join into somebody's central system, be an outstation or something like that. But it really wasn't offered.
No, it's not.
That's another ball they dropped.
Right, right. Like you said, when we were talking before we went on, your analogy about the electronic system, or electricity system, struck me that they really did drop the ball. I mean, like I said, the government. What I
Absolutely.
read, what I've read is that Cerner and Epic being the two big systems, and I don't know if there was even a third big system, but Cerner, Epic now, Epic back then probably had 40 or 50% of the market, and now it's probably got about 70 or 80% of the market. And Cerner has got much of the rest, and then a bunch of systems have a few percent each.
Yeah.
But Cerner, and when I've read in a I think it was a pediatrician wrote like a letter to the editor or something that I read. It was where he was saying that they heavily lobbied the Obama system, the presidency, Obama administration, to pass this because they knew that if you push this thing through in 2014, that they would be the only two companies that would have a chance on servicing the entire United States, making everybody go computer within, a few years, and but they didn't think about the interfaces, that of
Remember,
different systems.
you just reminded me of something. Yeah. There was actual financial pressure on you to go electronic at one point. They
Right,
weren't
right.
going to handle paper records anymore.
Right, you weren't allowed. It was you were gonna. There was threats. I forget exactly how. And then they were
Yeah.
going to give you $40,000, but you had to like jump through all kinds of hoops to qualify for the 40,000. And that sounded like a lot of money to me back then. But I'll bet you it probably now, especially nowadays, I'll bet it costs way more than $40,000 to keep to keep the
Oh
computers
my
running
God.
in your office. You practically have to have a full time. You have an office with a couple doctors and a couple nurses and a couple other tech receptionists and everybody else, billing and everybody else. I mean, you've got to have like 7 or 8 computers running. You practically have to have your own IT guy,
You do.
on a full time basis.
Absolutely. If that thing is not working that day, you're dead in the water.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah,
really can get done.
yeah.
Nothing.
We were talking, you reminded me too about, I talked to Anthony, our nephew,
Yeah.
who's the IT, I think he's one of the top IT guys at NYU now.
Oh my
And
God. Can you imagine?
they have well, you reminded me when you said you dictate your notes. They have in the rooms microphones hooked up to Epic. They've been on Epic for a while. And, the microphones are hooked up to Epic. Just like I'll send you a thing that AI is going to make of this discussion we had, including all the discussion we had before we went on. But it really is pretty good. And the AI, what it does in the hospital, it has microphones in the room. It generates your note. It's unbelievable. It
That's
generates the note.
incredible.
I mean,
I
it's
believe it.
I mean, obviously you have to check it and proofread it and everything, which again, I'm sure people do, but I'm sure they don't do it on a word to word basis. And I'm sure it comes
I'm
back to
sure they
haunt
do it in
you.
the beginning when they're checking on it, but after a
Yeah,
while they get used to it.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. But it's unbelievable. Like I say, the technology gives and the technology takes away. There are a lot of good things about it. There's no question medicine's way better. I mean, generally speaking, people are, other than COVID and obesity, people are certainly living longer than they did when we started,
Oh, they definitely are. They're in
Yeah,
better shape.
yeah,
I mean, you remember the day when people were horrified at the idea of doing a joint replacement on somebody who was 70. You
right,
know,
right.
they just said, "Nah, they're too old. They don't."
Well,
It's
I had
not
the same.
true.
I always
Look
remember a
around.
conversation I had with a cardiologist, one of my cardiologist friends, when I might have been in practice maybe 2 or 3 years at Cooper. So this is like 1982, 83. Called Chuck Leese, who was the cardiologist, and he had a guy. They'd cath him. He had good, he's had a good ventricle, nice vessels. The guy was like 72 years old, and I remember talking to Chuck and saying, Chuck, this is really a good case. But, these old guys just don't do well. You know what I mean? These old guys, 72. By 5 or 6 years after that, the average age of the person we operated on was like 70.
Yeah,
That's how fast it
that
changed.
really did change.
Yeah.
That really changed.
Yeah. Well, what was old got changed fast. Well, listen, hey, we're about a half an hour here, John, so it's really been interesting. We'll cut this off. If you want to talk some more after we're done, we can we can do it.
All right, bud.
Great. I hope to see you soon again. All right.
All right.
See you. Take it easy.
See you, Charlie. Take it
Bye-bye.
easy. Bye.